Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to be taking care of the spark plugs on the Toyota V12. So first things first, always make sure you disconnect the battery. And then I've already gotten started here to wrap my head around the process, but you're going to want to remove 4 bolts up front for the intake duct, and then the 4 bolts that are holding the engine cover. Now that the covers are off, the plastic covers are off, I've gone ahead and removed this intake hose. This one below here, there's a small clamp that you can get to with needle nose pliers. Remove it and then pull on this hose. And the top hose clamp as well, there's a couple bolts. So one down here, another bolt down here, and another bolt in front. So removing all of these bolts, I should be able to remove the right side intake. Another thing to consider when removing it is that there's this little T here that connects both sides together, and I guess it's kind of like a vacuum hose, or I don't really know what it is exactly, but it goes down into the motor, so you'll need to undo it from the right and left side, and then just repeat the same steps. So hose clamp, the 3 bolts, and the other hose clamp to remove the left side as well. Next up in the disassembly, there are 4 plugs to remove on the intake and a 12mm bolt right there. Next we move on to the intake manifold bolts, so all, I guess, 12 or 24 of them, I'm not too sure how many there are. Alright, so turns out you can't really access the bolts in the middle because of these hoses, and also because of the actual throttle bodies. So I am in the process of removing them. I'll be removing both, and also removing these center hoses to make sure to clear the way to be able to access the intake bolts. Removing the throttle bodies, to accomplish it you need to remove 4 bolts in front on either side, as well as 3 bolts up top, all 12mm, and 2 hoses. In the back here there are 2 vacuum hoses that need to be removed, and last but not least, the coolant hoses that I was talking about before. Now that we've cleared most of the crap out of the way, we can clearly get access to all the center bolts. But turns out I discovered that we were going to need to remove this just to be able to handle the right side and the left side separately without them being joined. And here you had the plastic standoffs. You can see the one in the back that we're holding in the 4 top plastic part in. Turns out you need a 14mm wrench, and take them by the top right here and just twist them off. Now that we're done with the front portion, it's time to get to work on the back portion of the intake manifold. So you'll have 2 bolts that you'll need to undo up top to loosen up this brace. And then in addition to that, you're going to need to disconnect these back hoses, which are held in with these types of clips, same as the ones that were in front. And so this hose I've already undone, and I'll need to undo the other one, as well as that connecting hose over there, which will also need to be unplugged. And so after removing all the hoses connected to it, as well as the electrical connectors, you can just remove that rear brace from the motor and get to the next part. The next step is going to be to remove anything on either side that could be holding in the intake manifold. So I've started up here with this hose, this nut here that was holding this bracket into place, but there are 2 more bolts at the bottom here that are bolted into the manifold, and the same thing on the other side. Now that I think everything is out of the way, so all these brackets here, the ground wire that was connected there. This hose in the front, this hose on the side with the bracket here. It's time to, I believe it's time to get to the center bolts for the intake manifold. Hopefully this just pulls out. And there you go. Just like that, you'll have access to all the coils and the injectors as well, if ever you want to do a job on those. Anything combustion related, you'll now have access with the intake manifold removed. I'll be removing the other side and then get to the actual spark plugs. So at this point you have a 10mm bolt holding in the coil pack, and you'll need a 16mm to remove the old spark plug. So in my case this was the old spark plug. And yeah, you just replace them with the new ones one by one and make sure you don't mix up those coil packs. And that's pretty much it. And just like that, I found the culprit for my misfire. You can see on the left here, the spark plug is completely burnt out. Compared to on the right, where it would still probably be okay to run it, but I got 12 new ones, so I'll replace all of them. But yeah, this one on the left is completely burnt out. And I'm only up to cylinder number 4, so still 8 more to go to see if I find other ones. Now I've installed all 12 spark plugs, but it turns out that whoever did the previous job on this vehicle probably used power tools, because the bolt holes that are holding in the coils are completely stripped, both this one and that one. So I'll be using this thread repair system, so a thread repair kit that comes with heli coils. It's for M6-1 bolts, which is what I believe these bolts are that hold in the coil packs. So I'll be re-drilling and re-tapping those holes to hopefully fix the issue. And that's just a reminder that you should never use power tools when doing this type of job. None of this needs to be torqued down to incredible specs. Just hand tight is good enough. So yeah, I'll be repairing these two to make sure it holds. Now for reassembly, I had labeled my cups, or actually numbered my cups in steps. So for me, step number 6 was to take off the center bolts for the intake manifold. Now, obviously, going backwards, step 6 is step 1. So I've put all these bolts back in, and then I'll move on to step 5, 4, 3, 2, and then 1 to reassemble all of it. Step 5 was to screw back in the 2 bottom bolts on each side, plus the small nut on top that holds the bracket in for these hoses, and plugging back in the hose up top and the hose at the bottom. Step 4 was this whole rear bracketry. So only 2 bolts, but a whole bunch of clips and clamps to join back all the hoses on the left and on the right side. Step 3, which is the longest one out of all of them, is to put back the throttle bodies, so 4 bolts on each side, connect the center brace, bolt back the center brace, and connect the back hoses to it. Then also reconnect this front hose with the standoffs for the engine cover. Reconnect this solenoid with its small hose, and this solenoid on the left with its hose as well. And I think that covers it. Also the center coolant hose that goes all the way. Both clips need to be put back on. And also when we start the engine, once everything is put back together, we're going to need to burp this hose because air bubbles will have entered the system. Step 2 was to bolt back all the plastic and rubber intake with the hose and the hose clamps on both sides. And now before we go to step one, which is to put back the engine cover and the battery cover, it's time to see if all this hard work paid off and if the motor runs fine. And there you have it. The job took me about 2 days, but I'm pretty confident that if I had to do it again, could be doable in 5 to 6 hours. Hope this helps.